You are listening to the Merchant Meetings podcast. Join us as we share the insights, successes, and failures that we and others have experienced in the small business space.
So thanks for being with us, Malakai. I guess, the place we would want to start is being, a top-level rugby league player. Why on earth did you think it was necessary to then start a business as well? Like, surely if this is, a very profitable sport to be in and you were earning good coin, why on earth did you think I should split my focus here and just have something on the offside as well?
I think it's because footy doesn't last forever. So you obviously have a limited time in footy, and I was heading to the back end of my career. So, the obvious thing to do is to try and plan for after footy. And I used to get asked all the time, don't you want to focus 100% on football? And, to be honest, I did do that. I had my beautiful wife, Brit, taking care of all the behind the scenes stuff that allowed me to focus on footy.
Yeah.
And I knew that footy wasn't going to last forever. And luckily I did, because my body ended up giving up on me at the age of 30. I thought I was playing to the age of 35, but my body had other plans. And luckily I had the business to fall back into, and now I'm doing full time and working full time in it.
Yeah, and so I guess I've heard a little bit about the challenges that you had with your body getting back into pre-season training. The obvious thought would have been, why don't you just give your body a bit of a rest? Like, you're clearly going to be able to move back into that position most likely, or another position in another team. Don't you want a few more years of that really high income sort of coming through? So what made you, certain that moving into the business would be a profitable outcome for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess the business was at the point where it was doing really well. That made the decision a lot easier. I remember sitting in the hospital bed for the third time trying to come back and train, and my kids just leaving, bawling their eyes out, and they were just, hyperventilating, crying, and that left an image in my head. And I just thought, I don't want to, continue pushing my body to that point. I practically almost died on the training field, and that was a pretty scary moment to think of, not because of my own personal safety or my own life, just because of what I'll be leaving behind, which is my wife and my two kids. So the decision really wasn't a hard one for me, because my health and being around the kids was the most important thing to me. I was just lucky that the business was at the point where I was able to transition full time in there.
That's awesome.
And still be profitable.
And so I guess, like, a natural transition, some people might be thinking, well, why didn't you open up a development clinic for rugby league, or a sports apparel brand, or, a line of clothing or something that often seems to be like a natural transition for footy players sort of, that want to make it in the business world. Watches, like, that's a very interesting business to get into. I would have thought a hard business to get into.
Yeah, definitely. So I was toying with the idea of starting our own activewear, our own clothing brand. Obviously, a lot of footy boys have done that, and there's still, boys that are very successful today, like YKTR, Earls, all those types of brands. And I guess, and Bloke in a Bar. But I guess for me, I loved watches growing up. Nothing too fancy, no Rolexes and stuff like that, but it was all your Tommy Hilfiger, Hugo Boss, all those types of brands of watches, which I class probably that kind of entry level.
Yep.
Nice watches, but you don't have the price tag attached to it, and it's really without spending an arm and a leg to kind of get one. So
that makes sense.
So I loved watches growing up, so I thought, why not start my own watch business? So took me about 8 or 9 months to get a bit of research behind me, because I had no idea how to start one. I had no idea how to design my own, how to make my own. So that took a fair bit to kind of get used to and learn.
So that's actually an interesting sequence of how you got into business, because often people will come across a product or a service and go, "Ooh, that's profitable. We should make this a business." But you truly started with the idea first. It's like, watches is something I'm interested in, something I'm passionate about. I actually want to see if I can make this a business.
Yeah, I think being an athlete first and always wanting to play on the big stage, I always dreamt and had a passion for footy. So I just thought, I can kind of use that same motivation, that same type of drive into something that I'm passionate about in the business world. And I was, I'm passionate in fashion and all this type of stuff. But, clothing was, has been done and is done by a lot of boys already. I wanted something a lot different, something a bit more unique, something never heard of, from someone in footy. So that's why watches, that's how the idea came about. And I love watches and I love designing them. And that's my favorite part about the business, is being able to design and see it go from a sketch to a prototype, a sample, and then to a bulk order. And then to see, our customers and fans, and they all wear our watches out in public and come up and show us. And it's just a really, really cool process. And I get a lot of fulfillment and enjoyment out of seeing that come to life. And that's where I say, having that passion for watches and having that passion for footy kind of aligned together.
It is a very cool thing to see people wear your brand. I know we've experienced that to sort of a small degree through our supplement stores. You see someone rocking a hoodie or a shirt just walking down the street as you're driving your car, and you're like, that's sick. Like sometimes the gratification that you get from that is just so much greater than the profit coming into a business, especially if you are financially stable, then you can really focus on those things. But I do think some of those internal benefits that come with building a brand are pretty cool. Now, obviously, the name Zelezniak works very well for watches. It's a, I guess, slightly hard name to pronounce. I did a couple of takes before we started the podcast, but it does, I guess, position it well inside the luxury space. And so you did mention that, you've looked at brands like Tommy Hilfiger, sort of those entry luxury sports type, I guess, brands. So I've only just sort of come into the watch space. I obviously looked at Rolex first because, it's the one that people know about and you kind of have an idea of what it means to own a Rolex. Could you kind of give us, I guess, a brief little breakdown on some of the brands that are out there and how you kind of see them in the market, just for people that want to get into watches, and then maybe off the back of that, just say how you believe Zelezniak watches are positioned as well. So maybe things like Patek Philippe and AP and Hublot and Rolex, just kind of what associations you believe that they have, or what market you believe that they have, and maybe you might have used that in, I guess, how you wanted to position your watches.
Yeah, definitely. So you touched on it. Rolex is like the most well-known brand in the watch industry, and it's probably one of the most owned watch, and it does give that status of that you've got money because you're obviously splashing on a 12 grand watch. Not only that, but they have really clever marketing ways where you got to go on a waiting list for 2 years, and then they do a full background check on you to.
It's like false scarcity because there's plenty of them out there.
Plenty,
yeah.
And it's right. Like they've got factories all over Switzerland, and they'll be able to produce a lot of watches a lot faster than any other brand I'd think, but they keep it scarce on purpose, and it works for Rolex. Rolex have that's why people want a Rolex, is because they can't get it. If you can't get something, people want it. It's valuable, and Rolex know that, and they play it really well. And I guess that's why everyone aspires to kind of have it, because they're like, oh, I'm still on the waiting list for 2 years. You got one? How did you get one? So it's that kind of hype around it. And then you got your APs and stuff like that. I feel is a bit more that kind of upper. You see a lot of celebrities in that rock APs. They're a lot more expensive, certain styles and stuff like that. So I would say the most common, luxury brand you see is a Rolex. And where our brand kind of comes in, we recently just got back from Switzerland. We went and visited a few manufacturers there, and we want to offer our customers that entry-level Swiss-made watch.
I feel like you just dropped that as a cruisy thing. So you went to Switzerland. Like that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, we did. We flew over last November. When we first started, we always wanted to offer that Swiss-made design or that Swiss-made watch because, Swiss-made is the pinnacle of watchmaking. You can get your watches made in Japan, China, and those are probably the two main markets you can get your watches made. And then obviously you got Switzerland, which is right up here. So they cost an arm and a leg, but for good reasons. They're probably the top quality watches you can get. So we flew over there last November, visited a few manufacturers. We knuckled down a design. I'm wearing it right now.
Ooh, very nice.
Wearing it right now, but
it's a business trip. There's business costs.
It's a business trip. But we had a bit of a holiday there. We got some content shot overseas. We visited a few countries, and we knuckled down our manufacturer, and we're about to launch our first Swiss-made divers watch. So,
very nice.
So that's at entry level. We want to position our brand to be like a luxury timepiece, but an affordable one. Not with the price tag. We understand people, there's people there that, can't afford a Rolex, that, want a nice watch to go out to dinner and stuff like that with. So we're trying to position our brand in that point where it's that entry-level Swiss made. It's our entry-level tier watches that are down the bottom there. And we want to position our brand kind of in the middle, kind of catering to both of them.
And so will the Swiss-made watches have sort of a higher tier amongst your offerings? And obviously the price point would reflect that?
Yeah, definitely. So Swiss-made is like your pinnacle, but it does come at a cost, and it does cost a lot. So they'll be our top tier, and they will cost quite a bit for those styles. But we're starting off with the first design, and we'll slowly add to it over time.
And so when I was looking across your website, just thinking back on that scarcity play that Rolex does use, which brings value, I did sort of see, I might have been like looking at it wrong, but I did see that some of these were like limited edition drops.
Yes, so we do limited edition drops as well, which we done one on me, on my brother, and on James Tarmel. So we drop limited drops every now and then. We try and do it every, say, 3 or 4 months, just to offer just that limited type of design for our customers. Everyone loves it. They fly off the shelf in under a minute, and there is only 20 made, so it's very
true
scarce.
Scarcity.
Yeah, and people know that, which is why they really want it, because they know only 20 is going to ever be made. So
that's very cool.
And people love that. Like, people love the point that they got number 1, number 2 in the order. So they'll come up to me and go, "Look, I got number 1. I got your watch. It's number 1," and be very excited. And then that makes me happy and excited as well. Them just seeing the joy on their face that they had got number 1 or number 2.
I remember seeing that because I've been following you a little while on Instagram, and we're talking seconds or minutes where people are selling out the drops.
So our limited drops go like that. Like I say, under a minute, but it's like within 15 to 20 seconds. It's as fast as you can type your details in and buy it. And I think having a drop like that kind of sparks a bit of hype around the brand. It sparks a bit of interest from people that have never heard of us, that their friends, they'll go and tell their friends, go, "Oh, I just missed out on this drop," or "I just got number 1," or "I got number 2." So
people are talking
about it, and that's the main thing. It's a bit of a marketing ploy at the same time, and you're making cash as well. So,
but it's true value, so it is a limited drop. And what sort of considerations do you make for choosing someone that you want to have a limited drop on? Is it always just based around a person, or could it just be a particular color? Or
so it is based around a person at the moment. We haven't really thought too far into the future as to how we want it to kind of go, because as you said, you can do a limited drop on a place, or a certain color, a person, all that type of stuff. So at the moment, we have a few players in the line to have their own limited edition watches, but that takes time and planning, and we're getting around to it. So we should have a drop by the end of the year, but
that is very
cool. Have to wait and see.
So we were just chatting before the podcast. The name Zelezniak for the watches actually is quite a unique way of, I guess, how it's even been a possibility to use that name. Did you just want to touch on how the name came about?
Yeah, so my grandpa, he was in the concentration camps over in Poland.
Wow.
During World War II, and the Russians broke him out. So, they broke him out of the concentration camps. He jumped on a boat over here to Australia, and they couldn't pronounce Zelezniak properly, so they gave him the name Shelley. So for the first 12 years of my life, I was known as Shelley.
Wow.
And then,
which wouldn't have looked quite as good on a watch.
No, Shelley definitely wouldn't have looked as good as Zelezniak on a watch. So my grandpa, before he passed away, changed his name back to Zelezniak, and my dad decided that he wanted to change his name back to Zelezniak as well. And my mum was filling out the paperwork, and as my mum does, she slid in her last name. Strategically slid it. And because the cost of changing name, I think there was 6 of us kids, and my mum and dad, it cost about $800 to change the name. So my dad wasn't going to spend another $800 to
change it back.
She's
done well.
My mum's thought of it all, and
she's playing chess. We're all playing checkers.
Exactly. So that's how Watene-Zelezniak came about for our last name, and we thought, why not name the brand after us? We're passionate about it, and it's our last name, so we want to have the best quality, the best customer service, everything like that, because essentially we're representing our last name and our family, and all of our ancestors that have been before us.
That's very cool. I don't know how to quite say this, but I feel like there's something special about names that are also slightly harder to say, because I feel like if you can say it correctly, there's a sort of status associated with it. Like I say AP only because like I always forget how to exactly pronounce it, and you don't want to say it wrong.
Exactly.
And I feel like, well, you don't have a choice of just being called. Oh, I guess you could go WZ, but it's not quite as nice. But I feel like as soon as you can say it, like there's a status that's associated with that, and obviously that will come over time. But yeah, that's super cool. Like it's interesting to see that the name was only a possibility with some pretty crazy events over history. Yeah. And so, me and T, being married, have obviously experienced being in business as a married couple. We know that Brit plays a pretty key role in your business as well. Did you want to talk about, like, I guess, the importance of having a supportive partner coming into a business?
Oh, it's massive. Like I touched on earlier, while I was playing footy, Brit done literally everything. I smiled for a camera, Dal smiles for a camera and goes, buy a watch. And that's practically all my role was in the business. Whereas my wife was running the day-to-day, the customer service, the packing orders, literally every hat of the business, the marketing, the socials, the ads, everything involved in it, she was doing it. So wow. I take my hat off to her because she practically built the brand from start to when I transitioned into it 2 years ago when I retired. So
that's pretty amazing because she's a mum of 2 kids as well.
Yes, she is a mum of 2 kids, and it was hard for her to try and balance that because as people know, having 2 young kids isn't the easiest, and sometimes they like to run around everywhere and cause a bit of mischief. So she was balancing that and the business at the same time. So
wow.
I take my hats off to her. If I didn't have her, I don't think the business would be anywhere near it is today without her. So
champion. I don't think we've yet met Brit, but we did see her down at the Penrith Westfields when you guys had your pop-up retail stores there. It's a very interesting thing to do, pop-up retail stores. Obviously, like there's quite a bit of brand awareness that you can gain from it. But was there a little bit more to the thinking, than just trying to achieve brand awareness? Was it like dipping your toe into the retail space potentially, or was it more just capitalizing on a seasonal trend, around Christmas?
It's a bit of it, all of those factors, to be honest. When we first decided to do a pop-up in Penrith Westfields, it was more to have people feel and touch our product because it's a watch. It costs a lot more than, say, a T-shirt or a jumper. You can just easily return those types of items. But everyone's always been DMing us saying, where can I feel it? I want to feel it. I want to try it on. I want to see if it's too big for my wrist, whether it's too small. I want to be able to feel it. So we pulled the trigger on that, and we didn't realize at the time we were more meaning to have that for our customers to try it on. Obviously, sales driven to bring in more sales than just our online. And we actually found that the brand awareness, there was so many people that have never heard of the brand in Penrith, and we just thought, oh yeah, we play for Panthers. Everyone will know about the watch brand in Penrith because it's Penrith Panthers. And it was really interesting to see a lot of customers or like a lot of new customers come in and just love the watch for the watch itself and not because we played footy. So it was cool to see that side of things where people love the design of the watches and not just because we were footy players. So that was one thing, was the brand awareness and bringing new customers and people into the brand. But it was also another sales avenue for us as well. So we weren't just making online sales, we were actually making physical sales at our store, that experiencing that kind of retail side of the business. And not only that, the store actually helps our online. So our sales will spike for that duration that would have the pop-up. So we done Mother's Day, Father's Day, and Christmas last year, which is the seasonal events. And people are spending money during those times. And, if you're a last minute shopper like me for Mother's Days and birthdays and stuff like that, we had a lot of last minute people come in and buy. So, obviously online takes a while to get sent.
Sure.
So our sales spiked both online and physically. And it was all because of the last minute shopping.
And would you say like a high proportion of sales was like gift buying? Was it like 50% of sales or maybe 20%?
I would say about 70%.
Wow.
70% was gift buying. So it wasn't really buying for themselves. They were buying for, birthday, for Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas presents, stuff like that. So I think with a high ticket item like our products, it's normally for gifts. It's normally for a special occasion, Valentine's Day, spoiling the partner. It's always, I'm coming to spoil my husband. I'm going to buy him a watch, or I'm going to spoil my wife. I'm going to buy her a watch. So it's a lot of, I would say about 70% of our customers are like that, whereas 30% is when people indulge and buy themselves a watch or buys themselves something.
That's a very interesting part to your business, because to have a product that can be introduced into the creation of memories is something that you can't do with all products. And, if you can create memories and then have that feed through your marketing, like buy your boyfriend, buy your wife, buy your grandpa, something that they're going to remember, that really plays into like quite a specific type of marketing that's only associated with things like timepieces or things that would be considered a gift that's actually special. So I think apart from getting the direct feedback at the retail places, you're also able to then use that to feed particular marketing messages. Is that something that you've already experimented with? The feedback that you were getting at the retail level was then, I guess, a part of the decision making of how you would then market some of those, I guess, seasonal trends?
Yeah, definitely. We found out so much information because Brit literally managed the store with a few workers under her. She got to see it firsthand, how the customers reacted, what they liked, what they didn't like. We had a lot of customers coming, I love this, but what about this color? So we actually implemented that in a few of our designs. We added colors to our designs because it was usually just black, white, your normal standard monochrome type of colors in the watches. But people started saying, I'd love a watch with a red face or a watch with a purple face, just stuff like that. And if we had heard it often, we then put it into our products. So,
which is probably something you received as a benefit, which would have never been thought about in the process of doing a retail pop-up.
No,
I guess just as a little plug for Merchant Media, I think one of the things that we sort of see at the retail level through our supplement stores is that direct feedback that Malakai is explaining. And it often allows us to go into, I guess, different industries and talk to business owners and say, hey, give us the feedback that you guys are getting on the ground level and knowing what questions to ask to achieve that level of feedback to then get the right marketing messages out to them. It's a pretty valuable thing. Yeah. You can literally understand where your customers are, what they want, and the little nuances that might be the exact marketing messages that you need to send through in order to resonate with a particular consumer. I do want to ask this question, which I know kind of sounds like a loaded question, but I think there's a few cowboys out there that would have thought, if I was famous, I would easily be able to launch a brand as well. That's the only reason that it succeeded. I actually think that you're now in the spotlight, and the potential failure of bringing out a product, especially I think as hard as watches, I think would have actually created a barrier to entry, whether it's in your mind or in reality, that's probably significantly harder than what people would, I guess, know about. Did you want to potentially talk about your thoughts on that? Was it truly harder doing this in the spotlight, or did you think that actually it was easier because you had a name that you could work from?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I always get but you're only successful because of footy, and to an extent that's true. I'm not going to tiptoe around the facts, but as you said, you are in the spotlight, and if you fail on the big stage. People are going to see you fail, and that does come with a bit of pressure. But the plus side of that, and having access to footy, is my networking. I was the type of guy that at corporate events, sponsors events, season launches, end of financial year sales is coming up. That's why it's on my mind. End of season presentations. Yeah. I would be the guy going out there meeting all the corporate sponsors. I wasn't the kind of player to sit in the corner and kind of just be there for the sake of being there. I got out there and I networked, I hustled, and I made relationships with different corporate sponsors that I still am good friends with today and I still use. So to the benefit of being a footy player and having that platform and having those eyes on you, it definitely helps. It helps with the marketing, it helps having access to the footy boys, like all my teammates and stuff. Sharing it on their social media and stuff like that really gets the brand out there. So to an extent, yes, it definitely has helped us get to the point where we're at, but it only takes you so far. And then, people don't see the behind the scenes stuff, what you're doing to actually get there. Having access to all these things, it doesn't automatically make you successful. It's not going to be a recipe for success, because there's a lot of people that have access to a lot of different networks and still really don't do anything with it. So, I think it's a bit of both. I do think that our brand has definitely benefited from being in footy, but yeah, it also comes with the pressure, and you definitely feel the pressure because you have to succeed. Yeah, everyone's watching.
And I think that's a really important thing. But you utilize the network that you're in. I think it's one thing to have a potential network, but to know how to utilize it well and create value exchanges that are healthy. That's going to, I guess, give sustainability to the business, because you can ask people for favors, but if you don't ask it in the right way or utilize your network in the right way, it can often actually mean that there's no continued relationship beyond the point that you've simply extracted a favor from someone. Could you potentially give us an insight of how to utilize your network effectively, how you create those value exchanges that are fair for two parties, or I guess what it felt like to go and utilize a network when people kind of knew that you were doing this to promote your brand? How can you keep sustainable relationships in the future whilst utilizing a network?
Yeah, well, I have this thing that I live by. I don't just want to use. I don't see you as a tool to be able to use and I like to build friendships and relationships with people, and I will try and give as much value as I can as a person and my platform and stuff like that, to help them out. And it's a bit of an exchange of value. So I'm able to give something to them and they're able to give something back, and that's what I feel good networking is. It's not just taking and taking and taking. You've got to give back just as much. And obviously if you do just take and take, those relationships end up ending because you're obviously using them. So networking is a tricky one, but it's also very, very, very useful.
I think we've kind of experienced that as well. Like sometimes you almost have to fight to give value to someone that just wants to give you a favor, and you're like, no, I know how this works. I need to give something to you. What can I do for you?
Yes.
So I heard in a previous podcast that once you decided to hang up the boots and move into the business full time, that you decided to have a bit of a rest, which is, completely understandable. But you said something like you only spent about 2 days before you were like, no, I need to go do something now. And obviously there's a decent amount of uncertainty with ending one or closing one door and opening another, I guess, more fully. Could you kind of give us an insight as to what sort of personality traits that you have, or maybe why you just couldn't rest for a little while? Is that a positive trait that you've got? Is it something that was needed? Were you using it to reduce uncertainty? Because I guess that's what's before you when you go into a business full time. Maybe just give us an insight to your mindset around why you just couldn't, sit around and have a rest, even though it was probably well earned.
Yes. So I had in my head I was going to rest for at least 2 weeks, not touch the business, watch a lot of Netflix, watch a lot of movies, and just sit on the couch and do absolutely nothing. No training, no nothing. Eat what I want, order in as much Uber Eats, and that's what I had in my head. That's what my plan was. And I remember the second day I was sitting on the couch, and I'd watched I think a season. I'd binge watched the season, and I was sitting there going, wow. I was like, I can't just keep doing this for the next 13 days. Like it's already getting to me. And I was sitting there, and because I was used to being told, how to sleep, how to eat, how to train, how to hold myself in front of media. You're practically a tool for the NRL. So you're being taught, and your life has been rotating around the NRL. So for me to sit there on the couch and do absolutely nothing, I was lost. Like I literally felt like I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what to do. I'm used to having someone tell me do this, do that, and I'm just sitting there. And I just remember standing in the living room. And my wife just walks in and she goes, "What are you doing? Like why are you just standing there?" And I said, "I don't know. I don't know what to do." And she just said, "Do anything. Go to the beach, go down there, go watch a movie." And I'm like, "Really? Well, do I do that?" So I was literally confused, and that's when I thought, I've got to dive into something to keep my mind occupied, or to have a purpose, because at the time I didn't realize. I look back now and I can see I didn't have that purpose. My purpose while I was playing was to obviously play first grade, play at my best, be the best player I can be, and perform for my team. And when I didn't have that purpose, I was lost. And so now I was standing there, I was like, I need my purpose. I need something to kind of work towards. And that's why I dived straight into the business, because I couldn't just sit around and do anything. And I'm used to always, high motivation. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And when I didn't have it there, I was kind of lost. And I was just able to transition from footy into business and kind of put all my efforts and drive into growing the business.
That's a very interesting thing that you said there. The NRL gave you a structure to work within. I think often entrepreneurship, which I would kind of classify this type of business venture with high entrepreneurial tendencies as opposed to just being a business owner that works within an established market. I think you're kind of leading the way. There wouldn't be too many people that you could rely on to say, hey, how should I, develop this watch brand that I've got? I think it's extremely entrepreneurial. And I think one of the massive challenges to entrepreneurs is often the structure that you can find inside an established market or inside a role like being inside the NRL is something that's easy to work within. The tasks might be hard. It might require like a high level of discipline, but you at least have a structure. You have a time that you need to show up to a place. There's KPIs, there's things that that are the bars for success that you need to hit. And when you move into, I guess, entrepreneur land, the structure is what you create for yourself. And that, I think that was one of the most daunting things that I experienced. I didn't have anyone in my family that I could really rely on to sort of show me how to get into business. And I remember traveling down the M4 one day and thinking, I literally create all of the structure that I have for myself, and I'm not a structured person. It's like I choose the uniform or lack of uniform in that case that I was going to wear, what time that I rock up. No one's going to tell me off if I haven't done this or I haven't done that. I need to set the standards for myself and what I believe are, achievements that I should be hitting based on my own sort of potential, because often I guess the KPIs that you have inside businesses or inside structures that someone else has created, they're going to create a sort of a measure for success based on what the business or the organization needs. Whereas when you've created the organization yourself and the structure yourself, you got to do it based on your own potential, because that's the only thing that I guess you have as a measure of whether you're doing what should be done or not. You can create a minimum standard for yourself, but I don't think you're going to get too far doing that. And so could you maybe give us some insights of what it was like to create a structure for yourself, being a part of something that is so disciplined? You would have defined training days, you would have defined measures of success, you would need to, be, I guess, focusing on recovery, and that would be partly on you to get yourself ready for the next training day or the next game. How did it feel like going into a place where there is no minimum standard, there is no levels of achievement that comes set in stone? What sort of structures did you need to put in place that you could actually start, I guess, executing a business in an optimal way?
Yeah, I struggled with that at the start. I'm still trying to work out my structure now and have a bit more of a balance. When I first transitioned into the business full time, I really struggled with that, because I'm all put 110% in, and I just had to work. I had to do something. It didn't matter what it was. I thought I had to work from 7 a.m. all the way till midnight, and that was my measure of success. That was the only thing I had. That was my KPI. If I start at 7, I finish at midnight, I'm doing something right. I'm working hard, and that didn't last long. It lasted for about a month and a half, 2 months before I burnt out.
Yes.
And I completely burnt out, and I didn't touch the business for about 3 weeks because I had felt really burnt out. I'm like, this can't be my KPI. I can't have this as if I do a 12-hour day, that's success for me. I've got to try and break it down and restructure how I look at success and what success in the business looks like to me. And I'm still trying to figure that out now. I'm not a structured person. I don't like structure as much. I like being told what to do. If someone's telling me what to do, I'll put 110% into it. Whereas I'm still figuring out for myself how to balance and how to put my own structures in that work for me and the business, and try and measure the success that way. And I don't have the secret recipe at the moment, but I'm working towards it. And I find that I'm at my best and I'm working more efficient in the business. I see success in the business is when I have a good balance. My family is in order. I've got plenty of kids' time where I can take them to the park and help them with soccer training and stuff like that. I've got my own exercising, so I'm going to the gym and I'm working out, and that makes me feel great. I'm in the sauna, cold showers, all that type of stuff. So that's a personal thing, and I find when that balance is right, the business just is so much more successful, and you can see it with sales, you can see it with different targets you set. So I'm still figuring it out now. I don't have.
It's a hard thing.
It's so hard.
I guess especially as Britt was doing a lot of the work prior to you coming into it full time, Can you kind of, I guess, share with us how many hats that you kind of had to put on, I guess, once you started to move more into some of the roles that she was previously doing? Did she not, actually, as a point, did she not want to relinquish control? Because I feel like when you start birthing something, it's kind of like, this is my baby. Like, what are you doing? Like, I'll tell you how to do this. Like, was that sort of a dynamic as well?
I'm glad you brought that up, because Britt and I struggled for the first, I reckon, for the first 6 months, because as you said, this was, in my head, being in the footy world, and it's probably my ego and a bit arrogant of me. I thought, no, it's my business. Like, it's my last name.
I'm the face here. Yeah.
I'm the face. It's my last name. What do you mean? It's my business. But in all reality, no, it wasn't. Britt birthed this from start all the way up into the point where I transitioned into it full time. And I didn't realize it at the time. We butt heads on that. She's like, no, this is my baby. I've worked hard to get this here. And I'm like, it's my face. Da, 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 da. Like, that was the banter back and forth. And in all reality, the business would not be where it is without her. She is like the reason it is where it is today. She built it up at the point where I was able to transition into it when I retired. So, Britt is the main reason why this happened. So
I guess, like, identifying specific roles, that's something that we've had to really focus on as we've grown, because often when you're starting up in business, you're wearing a lot of hats because that's the necessity of doing business as a small owner operator. But as soon as the business starts to grow, you need to actually identify specific roles. Otherwise, you're not going to be, I guess, working in an optimized way, because there's too many crossovers. Someone's doing a little bit of this and another person's doing a little bit of this, and you just don't get, like, I guess, an optimized outcome. Is she still wearing quite a few hats, or have you taken some of those hats off her? Like, could you kind of give us an idea of, who's doing the bulk of, like, I guess, the digital marketing? I know I've seen a camera in your hands at various times. I guess who's looking over the financials? I assume you're still working tightly with people in your network. How does the setup kind of look?
So it's pretty split 50-50. Like, I'm more so I studied graphic design during my under 20s. So I had done my advanced diploma in graphic design, so I'm pretty handy behind the camera. Wow. Stuff like that. I'm not a professional by any means, but it does the job. And so I had to take more of the creative side of the business, where it's the designing of the watches, it's the content, it's the planning of the shoots, all that type of stuff. Whereas Britt's more the behind the scenes, where she runs, like, the customer service, down to organizing the shoot. So I'll have the idea, Britt will make the action. So I'm the ideas guy and Britt's the action person. So she'll make it happen.
She executes.
Whereas I've got plenty of ideas. I could give you ideas, but I struggle with putting it to action, and Britt's that person.
You got a big smile on your face. So you're resonating with the same sort of message here?
Don't put me on the spot here. I'm enjoying the story.
So I feel like, T and Britt are probably playing roles where executing and actually getting the job done is, I guess, something we have really found to be the same case. I'm an ideas person too. Like, I know T looks at me when I come in with a new idea. It's just like, you can tell, like, what she's telling me, like, by looking at me is, you're coming with a new idea, but you are not associating how much workload is now going to be placed on me for this thing to happen. And I'm like, yeah, but it's a good idea. And it's like, yes, just like your last one. And that didn't come to fruition either, because I am one person.
Yep. Oh, 100%.
So yeah, like, I'm very unstructured as well. Like, if there's a new shiny ball to play with, you can, like, bet that I'm playing with it. Yeah. And T's extremely scheduled and very good with her time, and the person that's executing on things. As much as I create the structures, I think in a very optimized way, actually pulling the trigger and executing on the day-to-day operations, I think, is the thing that I've been most grateful for, working with a supportive partner in business. Did you have any follow-up questions, T?
I think after hearing everything Britt does, she needs her own line.
Yeah.
I think she does.
A limited drop.
Yeah.
You know what? We've been asked a lot of times about Britt having her own limited drop, and I said, it's coming. So stay tuned.
But it's going to be Swiss made, right?
Swiss made, exactly.
That's
Only
the
the best. Only the best.
Her one has to be Swiss made.
Yeah.
That's very cool. We really appreciate you coming in and kind of sharing the story with us. We've asked our last guest the question, a piece of business advice that you've received that you that I guess sounded true that you now believe to either be false or just misleading? So it could be something similar to, the mentality of you grinding it out and then finding that that's actually not probably the right way to go about things, but we're not going to let you use that one. You're going to use that one?
That's the one I was going to use.
Do you have another one?
Okay. Another one would have to be... I was going to use that one. I had that one.
That was already...
That was on my head. But on the flip side, I got told quite a few times to have at least 100 photos or videos saved up in a bank. And at the time, I was like, one photo shoot's enough. And then it's not until you get to the point where you run out of content and you're like, you know what, that 100 photos and videos stored in a bank would come in handy right now instead of trying to rush around and organize photo shoots. So my thing that I probably learned from that is that have a massive amount of content. You may not use it, but it's better to have it sitting there when you need it. And, I'm at the point now today that I need content, which is why I rushed over and got photo shoots and stuff organized, because I didn't listen to the advice that was given to me. So
maybe, I guess to help out, because I've stolen your answer, often people will say to people in business, you just need to make the jump at some point. Do you think that that's good information for people, or do you think that potentially having a strategy in order for you to execute on it well, once that's established, then you can jump, not just I guess learning on the fly? Because I know you did say that coming out and hanging up the boots and moving into the watch game full time, one of the things you missed was a structure. And so you actually ended up burning out as a result of putting the grind in without a strategy. So would you potentially say that maybe people shouldn't be jumping into, I guess, something that they're just passionate about, that there should be a strategy that leads it? And it might sound like, I guess, like a post-rationalization that we're looking back in hindsight as this being an obvious lesson. But would you say that that's something that you've experienced? Optimizing work through having a structure maybe should be the advice being put out rather than jumping? Or do you actually think, no, these are most of the lessons that you're learning because you jumped in?
That's a good question. And I actually have heard that quite a bit. Even before we had started the business, I still hear it now. And I think you definitely need structure. Like, I'm all for jumping in. Don't get me wrong. I love to jump in. I'm that type of person to just jump into it and get it done. But it can set you up for failure. And yes, you may jump in and you may see success for the first week or two, and then it kind of dies down. And because you don't have that structure or that plan in place, you're there for 2 weeks. You're the hot minute for the first 2 weeks, and then your brand or your company is gone. So I'm a big believer that, don't just jump in. Plan ahead, have things in place before you do jump in. Yep. Because you may be good at the start, and then you slowly find out, hang on a minute, now what do I do? I've had all this hype, I've had all this success. What's next? And, it could be too late by the time you're thinking about that. Your brand could end up
taking a hit.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. Did you have any final questions, T? No, you're
Nope.
good.
I'm on your website right now.
Is there anything that you have coming up with Zelezniak Watches that you would like people to know about?
Yeah, so we got the Swiss made that are dropping. We've got about 4 new styles coming before the end of the year, which we've got to build campaigns and that around. But we've got new styles coming, new women's watches coming. I know it's been a while. It is heavily male dominant in the watch design, only because I am the designer. So I love to design things that I would wear and what I like to wear. So I have pulled the finger out a bit, and I've designed a new women's watch coming. So that should be here in the next couple of weeks. So
awesome. We'll be looking out for that.
Coming soon.
That's it.
We've just spent some money, I think. So yeah, definitely appreciate you coming on, bro. We really appreciate that. And I think some of the insights that you've given have been very valuable. I think we might just wrap it up here. I'm hoping we can touch base in the future sometime, because I obviously see that the business that you're going to be in is going to be growing, and I'm sure there's going to be some cool things. And I guess we can look back on some of those things once, I guess, the milestones are reached and talk about them again. But yeah, we really appreciate it, mate. I think we'll wrap it up here.
Thanks for having me. It's been awesome.
Cut. Yeah, Britt needs a
That was
line.
good. Oh,